Welcome back. It's Thursday, May 12th. Things are going very well. Glad to have everybody with us here again today. The overall update will be very positive as well. Had a chance to talk about this at the board meeting on Monday night. And so it's going to be a recap if anybody was at the meeting of what we discussed. But overall, things are still going really, really well. And we'll have an update. I'll be able to show you some pictures also, which I'm excited to do today, just to have the opportunity to show you some actual footage from the building to show you where we're at. So I'm going to do it in two sections. The first will be what happened last week. The second will be what happened this week. And then we're going to go through each individual topic as well. So we'll start with May 2nd. We've continued the floor tile installation in the classrooms, and you'll be able to see some pictures of that shortly. We've also continued the floor prep, and something that we talked about in each one of these meetings that I want to stress is that not only are we putting the floor in, but we're also preparing the floor behind it. So it's not like we're waiting for one room to be done. There is a continuous work crew throughout the building, multiple work crews, where they are not only fixing the floor, but they're also putting the floor in right behind it. So they're working simultaneously. We continued the painting in the classrooms. We started framing the soffits above the lockers, which are very important, and I'll show you pictures shortly. And the reason that those are important is because the locker itself is not going to hold this up. We're not going to keep students from coming into the building in September because they can't have a locker. If worse comes to worse and the locker for some reason can't work, we'll always have the students have their backpacks or go through that. But the structure around the locker, the soffit above and below, has to be secure because that's a safety issue. Otherwise, the lockers could tip over and fall out. So that's being done as well, besides what's going on in the classroom. Spackling sheetrock walls is continuing. We sheetrock the entire building, and now they're spackling to make sure once that's set, we can then paint right behind it. And just overall continuing with the project with our weekly meetings as well. The activities that we had this week that are finishing up. So that was last week. This week, continuing the floor prep as well, the tiles, the drywall, the soffit work, painting of the classrooms. Now, when the soffits are set, and I'll show you that picture in a little bit, when the soffits are set, the lockers can be fixated to the wall to make sure that they're in and they're in place. So that's continuing as we get different sections done with the soffits. The piping and electrical work for the boilers. If you saw on the website, we had a 1.5 minute video that was put together by Laura Bishop Associates, which have been great. And they're putting the boilers in. The boilers arrived on April 30th outside. They are now inside the actual room, the heating and cooling room. They're not in the pit. Remember, we removed them. We put the cement pads there, and they're connecting the piping that's going into the rest of the school. We had our project meeting this week, which again is going very, very well. We're having a floor tile being delivered. We had a certain amount of floor tile that was delivered. Again, we're doing this as quickly as possible. So we didn't want to wait for the entire floor tile order to be ready. So we had a section of the floor tile delivered so we can start putting it in. There's another section of floor tile that's coming for the entire school next week. And we will have that on site as well, so we can finish up doing the flooring for the entire school. We're looking for electrical work, of course, plumbing work. That's being done as well throughout the building, and going over some last minute details there as well. Okay, what I will do now is I want to show you, I'm going to share my screen here just so that you have an ability to see some of the work that's going on. So Kevin, I'm going to share it now. Just give me a thumbs up when it looks okay. How's that look, Kev? Okay. Great. So these are just some pictures that I wanted to show you of the work that's going on in the building. So this first picture here, what you see are the lockers. This is in the C wing. This is from the back, almost by the gymnasium view. And what you'll see is the metal soffits. You can see them up here. The metal soffits are going into the structure to keep it secure. Once that's done, the sheetrock goes over it, and we're going to paint it. Actually going to be gold to have some gold color in the hallways. So that's the C wing. Here's another view, just different angle of the same side. So once we have the metal in, we put this over the top. This is critical because, of course, once we get the flooring in, we're just pretty much waiting on the univent, and the hallways have to be prepared. But the first step for the hallway is to make sure that the lockers are safe, that they don't tip over, and that the soffits are good there as well. I mentioned the boilers. Here are the boilers in the actual room. This is the piping area up here. So that piping is being attached Here's another way to look at it as well. So the piping is being attached from the boilers that's going throughout the building. Remember, we can't test the heat, of course, until we have all the univents in, but this is the first step to make sure that here are boilers. This is a back view. So if you're looking at this window beyond here, that's looking into the C-Wing parking lot. Here's an example of the classroom. You can see the flooring is going in. I believe we have, Dawn, I think we said like 12, about 12 classrooms that, yep, got it, have had the flooring put in. So that is the flooring. It's actually looking a lot nicer than the way it used to be honest. So we have flooring that's going in. You can see that the glue is placed. And then once that's done, they put the flooring in and we work through. We're starting in the back by the gymnasium. That was done strategically because, of course, if we get to a situation where only a section of the building is open, which is not our goal, but the most important section to us is the C-Wing that goes all the way down and connects with the gymnasium. So that's why we started that way and worked backwards. Another example of the flooring. This is a different room. So as you can see, they are making really good progress within the building. Painting as well. Now, this is an example of a floor that's not in. They're going to put the glue on this and attach the floor as well. So this is sort of an example of what they had prior to the pictures that you saw. They're doing, of course, repainting as well all the way across the board. And we know the electrical work is good because we had that tested. So that was a big, big step forward. Again, another example of a room. And two more pictures here. Drywall has been put in place. So this is along the B wing. We have the drywall being placed in. That's where we'll have our univent, of course, which will then attach and make sure that we can conduct the heat and the fresh air. And again, here's the drywall. So what happens is all of this area, this purple area was cut out. It was open. So now that we've had the sheetrock placed in, we've had that, we'll have that painted and we will go from there. Okay, Kev, back to normal screen, right? Okay, great, thanks. So now I want to talk to you about individual areas. The first one is the abatement. The asbestos abatement is completely done. The classroom floor tiles, we have 12 classrooms finished. As I said, we have 4 truckloads of tiles, which would be the remaining tile for the entire building to be delivered on Monday. We're going to store that in the upper cafeteria. We're going to be continuing that through the end of May. So we only have a couple more weeks left, but certainly we think that the flooring will be done in the entire building by the end of May, which is really a huge step for our district. So I'm very excited about that because that has to happen before we can move forward. The weight room flooring is scheduled to be delivered on May 24th. Again, we're working around that right now, but the flooring should be in place for the weight room on May 24th. And we're going to continue prepping in advance of the laying of the tiles throughout the entire building. Sheetrock and painting is moving forward. All sheetrock has been completed. We're on the spackling. I would say for painting, we have about 60% of the building painted, but they're moving very quickly through the building. Right as soon as they put the sheetrock in, we go into each individual classroom. As I mentioned, the lockers, that's the next part. Hallway lockers have been realigned to the back of the wall. We have that new steel base, which is critical because obviously we don't want to take the wood out. It was wood for many, many years. Now we're putting steel in, of course, which is stronger and better just in case there is any water. Univents will start arriving the first week in June. I know that is the big question because, as I mentioned, the univents are each of those 52 units that have to be placed in each of those classrooms. So that will be here the first week in June. Now, the energy recovery unit, that is the portion that is half of the univent that conducts the fresh air coming from outside, the energy recovery unit, that is still scheduled for mid-July to mid-August. So mid-July to mid-August is when we have those univents, those energy recovery units coming in. But again, I have spoke with the DOE and I have spoke with the county office saying that obviously fresh air, at least for September, up until that October 15th deadline, can be conducted by opening the windows. So that really is critical. Getting the univent in is critical. Getting the energy recovery unit is the last part, but that really doesn't come into play until that temperature changes. So I'm going to stay on top of that and make sure that we're aware that if there is a delay in some of the energy recovery units, we're not going to be in a situation where we can't open because of that, because if the weather is like it is today, there's no reason that we can't open the windows. We're not going to have any AC all summer. Obviously, that the AC is governed by the new chiller that is on top of the gymnasium. That is the chiller that conducts air throughout the entire building. So we've already had the dehumidifiers, which I talked about, because we need to have the school dehumidified throughout the summer when it's really hot. Those have arrived. They're here in the district, so we're ready to deploy those as needed. but we will not have AC all summer, and we will not have AC in June, which is why you heard from Mr. Massaro, and you'll be hearing shortly that when we're talking about the high school graduation, that event really needs to be outside. We can't be in a situation where there is no AC and we're putting potentially 1,000 people inside the gymnasium. So it's always nicer outside. The parents always want it outside. And assuming weather permitted, we will have it, and then we will have a rain date for it outside as well. But a lot of the parents, I think, are happy about that, because when we have the high school graduation outside and middle school graduation and all award ceremonies, there is no limit on the amount of people that can come. So we're going to move forward with that, because we will just not have AC, because we can't have AC unless the unit events are fully connected. We're working on content as well. We're starting to open. We took a lot of the materials that we saved from the room and we put them in the band room. So those are now being opened and cleaned. There's a lot of essential items that the teachers, staff members needed that were not damaged. So we had to box them up. Of course, when we open them up, there could be some cleaning that needs to happen, but we're starting to slowly go through the items that were packaged and placed in the band room, and it's filled almost to the ceiling. So we're going through that as well, because we're just going to start cleaning it and make sure when the room is ready, we can start putting those items back in. A lot of the items may be damaged or have to be cleaned because of the smell. That's not a problem. We're going to go through it, because the items that we threw out were damaged. Those that we saved in the band room are items that we really want to try to salvage. So they were wrapped in plastic, but still, they still have to be cleaned before they are deployed. And the mitigation. So I had a conversation with Mayor Romeo, who's been fantastic, trying to work with the politicians as well as us with the politicians. I know we talked to Senator Booker the other day, which was great. And what we're hearing, of course, is that FEMA, while they do reimburse up to 90%, there are rules and regulations. And Chris Hartnett, who's our FEMA expert that we've had for the last 6 months, he's been instrumental in working with us going through the FEMA process. But when it comes to a mitigation measure, FEMA has to come on site and approve it. So I talked to the mayor and Senator Booker, and we're all on board with this. What we're going to do is make sure that we have something in place, obviously, for September. While something such as these lock walls that you may see on the highway that can go around the building, or Tiger Dam, which is something that I mentioned, which inflates, that protects the entire building, while those items are very effective and very useful, FEMA wants a more permanent solution. The national FEMA advisors that we have said they want a more permanent solution, which is fine. We have no problem doing that. But they're going to reimburse up to 90% of that permanent solution. We want to make sure that we're protected August 1st, because obviously we don't want to have a hurricane come through in August while they're finishing up a project, and make sure that the school is protected. So we will be funding our own protection that will work for the school. FEMA will also be giving us 90% back of a permanent solution, such as a wall, a 3-foot wall, brick wall that's placed around the entire school. And the Army Corps of Engineers, Senator Booker has informed us, is on top of that, and they're working on a full-scale solution to the entire area. So our mitigation measures are threefold. Number one, it's us moving forward with our own internal mechanism to protect the school. Two, it's having a approved national FEMA approved mitigation measure, which is going to end up being what we feel is a cement wall going around the entire building, which will look fine and will match to the decor of the school. But that takes a while to get approved from the national FEMA director, even with Senator Booker working with us. And then number three, we have the Army Corps of Engineers taking care of the outlying area. And I had a conversation with the Army Corps of Engineers last week, where I reiterated the importance of taking a look at what happened in Demarest, because while the lake, I guess it's called, is now empty and there's nothing inside of that lake, that we feel is really what hurt our school district, because you can see the water line throughout the entire building on the sea wing. It goes up to my knee. So we're talking about 2 feet of water that was up there, and we feel that that really was influenced by Demarest. I am happy to report that last week we were ready. Of course, there was nonstop rain that occurred last week for basically 48 hours, and not a drop of water got into the entire building. But we were ready. We have protective measures in place just in case that happened. So that is my summary. At this point, we're doing very well. Things continue to move forward. The 4 univents, which came up at the Monday meeting, the smaller univents that were not manufactured by Train, had to come back and had to be fixed. Those should be arriving next week, and we should have those in as well. Okay, so I'll take a few questions here. Let me just look in the chat again. Please type them in the chat and I will go through them. Okay, question from Ms. Fisher. Wondering if you can use the funds raised by parents to help with the budget cuts you need to make. Ms. Fisher, that goes through the HSA. That's their question. I would tell you that we cannot use that money for salaries, unfortunately. We've had to make some cuts. All districts in our area have had to make cuts. It's not just our situation with the flood, but so many districts have talked to me about the 2% cap, which started in 2010, is really starting to put a stranglehold. We hit cuts as well because we have to front a lot of money, obviously, until we get it back from FEMA. But I will tell you that the money that was raised by the parents, again, overly wonderful, but is not something that can be directly paid for salaries. It is not. What is the current question here from Alyssa? What is the current backup plan for September if the school is not ready for some of all the students? Alyssa, as I mentioned on Monday, we're in discussions with St. Therese, but of course, St. Therese and the Archdiocese, which I understand, is going through financial troubles as well. So it was not prudent for us to get into a year lease with St. Therese, which would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even though we have a good deal on the building, it's still, challenged to lease a full building for 12 months. That's not something that we could afford for this coming year. So we have pursued a 6-month lease, thinking that that was reasonable. Certainly we'll be back in the school by that time. And we thought that maybe looking at 6 months would be a reasonable sort of middle ground. And the Archdiocese, while they've been very supportive, don't like that idea because right now they're really desperate to get someone in for the full year. So what they said is they're going to continue looking for someone for the full year. And if that doesn't happen, they would be willing to talk about a shorter lease for us, which really fits our purposes, because I am very confident, as the board mentioned as well, that we will have at least, at a minimum, part of this building available in September. And right now we're on pace for the full building. So for us to rent another building for 12 months and allocate that money for a building that may not be used, certainly won't be used for the full year, and potentially not used for more than a couple months, just didn't seem like the right idea. So we were open for that. Our backup plan right now, if we need it, and again, right now I have no indication that we do, would be Choday. It would have to, the reason that Choday is attractive is because we can go to them in August and tell them in August, hey, we're going to need the building for a month or two or something like that. And that's really, if there's a worst case scenario, that's really the only thing that I see right now is maybe part of the building is available in September and the full building is not available for a month or two. So again, having a location that could rent month to month is a huge advantage for us because we don't want to allocate money that we are eventually not going to use. So right now, that would be the backup plan. We could always use the rec center, of course, if we needed part of that building. But right now, the backup plan would be Choday if necessary. But I don't have any indication that that's the case. But I think that's the best financial decision for the school district. I don't want to allocate potentially $300,000 for a building that we're just not going to use for most of the year. Have you received confirmation from Anna on writing that we can open windows if recovery units are not ready? Good question, Anna. I've asked for that repeatedly. They continue to say the same phrase, which is we'll check back in the summer. They won't give me that in writing, but I can assure you I continue to annoy them at great length to talk about that. They have said that verbally. They have not said that in writing yet, but I'm going to continue to push that because there is no state requirement about heating until October 15th. And certainly while we're targeting September 1st, October 15th is a nice buffer to have to finish everything up. Second question here from Anna about what if it rains for graduation? There's a rain date. And that's what we've done each of the last 2 years is we've not been able to be inside, of course, but we have a rain date planned. And I think that is the best move because also we got a notice from the New Jersey Department of Health that the COVID cases are rising. And so to put, not only will we not have air, and I've been in that gym when there's no air, that's rough. And this is a wonderful, exciting thing for our students. And we want to have them, for example, the procession when they walk in, that's a great moment. The procession when the students are coming in. And of course, because of the way the building is, the students couldn't even process down the C wing. They'd have to curl outside. So really having it outside is our focus. And we have a rain date for that. Mr. Massaro has that information as well. But it's just great because everyone can come. There's no limit of tickets. And again, we've always been able to get it in on the original date or a backup date. And that's what most schools do. Where is the funding coming from the mitigation? Is that part of the 21 million on? I would say this, we're going to prepare for mitigation within our own budget. That initial Tiger Dam, that initial lock walls that they have that you see on the highway, that will come from us. Then part of that 21 million, but FEMA has to approve it, not just New Jersey FEMA, but the state FEMA, because President Biden has now allocated money and been involved as well. That has to be approved by FEMA nationally. Then we can do that. That's the wall. And then, of course, the Army Corps of Engineers have started their preparation as well. So there are three options. But as a district, we can't return in September and wait for approval on some huge long-term wall. We have to have something that prevents the water in September. And that's why we're going to spend our money from our own budget here to make sure that that occurs. Next question from Reed. Can you address the money spent on busing that was not in our budget and how this impacts the upcoming year? Dawn, I'll let you take this one in a minute. Are you still looking at hiring staff so there is no crossover between middle school and high school in the event we need to use multiple locations? Reed, I'll answer the question about the staffing, and then Dawn, you can talk about the busing. As far as the staffing, we are reassigning our own staff for that. We had to cover and really stretch. There are some teachers that unfortunately are going to be teaching things that may be new to them. They're wonderful and they'll find a way to prepare, but to have them prepare for that over the summer is a little easier than having them change in the fourth marking period and approve that. So we've had to limit some electives. There were some electives we used to be able to run at 8 to 10 people. We may not be able to run those this next upcoming year, but we are still doing that because, of course, going back to the question before, if we have a worst case scenario, let's say, and the high school can go into the building, but the middle school can't, or vice versa, we have to have that separate staff because that allows us to give more education. Dawn, you can talk about the money with the busing and how we're proceeding with that as well.
Yeah, the busing to date it's been several $100,000. We're looking to cost around $500,000 in total for the busing. We did submit the application to FEMA. It was immediately denied based on their regulations that do not allow for reimbursement of busing, very specifically reimbursement of busing. So we've appealed that. We recently got a letter from the Department of Education saying that we are only busing in regards to the storm, that we had historically not been a busing district, had to bus because of our relocation of our students. So we're going to wait for the appeal now. It's being paid for with current budget funds with the hope that we get reimbursed.
Yeah, next question, which is sort of tied into that. I'll come back. There's a question about the boilers, Dawn, about the installation of the boilers. We'll come to that in a minute. Next one said, is there any plan to have the safeguards in place earlier, given the typical hurricane storm season, so that can begin early in the summer? That's exactly our point, is that when Mayor Romeo talked to Senator Booker and there was that discussion, they are pushing hard to get us the approvals we need from FEMA rapidly. But as we learn through this process, there is a bureaucracy that takes a little bit of time. We are not at the point where we can wait for approval to move forward with our mitigation measures. We need to have this building protected early in the summer, which is why we have our 2 presentations coming up in the next week or so. We're going to pick one of those and we're going to have protective measures in place in the summer prior to hurricane season. So even if FEMA comes forward and said, sure, we'll approve a wall to be built around, at or around October 1st, well, we have to cover the building for August. We have to cover the building for September, which is why we're going to use our own money and invest in a temporary barrier, and they can come in and do a permanent barrier. But that's the thing, is we're not going to wait. This drags on and you have a national representative, and we've had Chris Hartman, who's been wonderful, but there still seems to be this level of bureaucracy to get approval in order for the funding to come. That may come. We're not going to wait for that. So we're going to have our own safeguard mitigation measures in place as well prior to the start of school year, while we wait for FEMA to give us the approval for the larger ones. Question from Sue. Is there a schedule on-site inspections, the county and our state level? Yes, I have told them. They said they want the floors in place. They want the boilers in. They want the univents to start coming in, and then they will do a first visit for the site right away. And we're going to have them through the process, because if they start coming in with the univents, we have the floors in, we have it painted, we start having the univents come in, they can check where we put the boilers, everything can move forward in that regard, which is great. So they said they will do a first run. I anticipate, Sue, having about 3 visits from the inspectors as we go through the summer. Dawn, update on the boiler installation.
So as Mike stated, you stated earlier, we have the four boilers delivered already. They're on the pads in the boiler room. Right now, they're working for connecting the piping as Mike showed in the pictures. We are connecting them to our existing piping system. So all of that is going along very well, very quickly. The boilers are separate, obviously, from the univents that will be delivered later in the spring.
All right, and a couple last questions here. This is the challenge of the budget, Dawn. We have a question. I'll take this one. Where do we get the money for busing kids if we have to go to Cho Day in September? That is really the critical issue that Dawn and I have been facing. Is that's why some of the cuts occurred. We have to plan as if that could be a possibility. And we have to allocate our budget. We can't take a risk and then all of a sudden find out that we have to bust a Cho Day for a month, maybe a month and a half, and then have to scramble to find that money. So it's about finding the balance between what we think is fair, what we think we have, and what we have to set up just in case of that emergency situation. Next question, if we use Cho Day in September, will the kids share classes or will it be full day, same as it is now? We're going to be going as much as possible in Cho Day. So I expect more instruction in Cho Day. That's by having the separate staff. We don't have to worry about crossovers. So in that worst case scenario, what I envision is having more instruction than we had this time. Now, we still have to work around sharing of buses, of course, but it would be less. But certainly bringing back the Mondays, maybe having an abbreviated Friday. It would be a short period of time. I don't anticipate any scenario where kids are going to Cho Day for 3 to 4 months. I don't. So if in a worst case scenario, we're talking about a month. But right now, like I said, if you're asking me right now, everything is on pace for a full opening of all those classrooms in September. Heidi Martin, 168 9th Street. If we use Cho Day in September, is a plan for the middle school? Do you have money for the buses, or is that going to delay the kids starting in person? It's not. Heidi, we're gonna start instruction in this building in whatever section or full building in the high school, middle school for September, right at the beginning of school. There is no delay. And then if we have to bus kids off site, that would start right away as well. I would never go to a delay unless there was some reason that if we delayed by, let's say, 5 days, we would have the full building available. But of course, that's something we'll update you in the summer. These updates will continue throughout the summer. That was asked on Monday as well. You will have updates from me in July and August. So the only way, Heidi, I would say that we could delay is if for some reason I heard that if you just delayed a couple days, the full building would be available and you wouldn't have to go to Cho Day. But no, I want to get these kids back at in-person instruction. So if that means a few weeks, we can do a few weeks of busing, whatever we have to do. Question here, any update on the levees that broke in the surrounding areas that may have impacted our flood? Right now, there isn't. I talked to the Army Corps of Engineers last week, and I told them that's the area that they really have to look at. They went up there and they took a look and they said that it was fine and that there's no water actually in that area that broke. But they said right now that everything seems fine with these surrounding areas. So that's why I think it's a 3-level approach. 1, our budget, we take care of things. 2, we have an approved wall or something that's done throughout the entire FEMA process throughout the entire building. And 3, the Army Corps of Engineers. And I think that's it, guys. I appreciate your time coming in. We will post this on the site. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. You can send those in. We can answer those. I will be back in 2 weeks on the Thursday to have another update for you. But we're really excited about moving forward. Again, all good things. A lot of you have come by and sent me emails that you've been walking around the building and you see some of the progress. I'm with you. We're all for it. So we keep walking through and things are going very, very well. Thanks, everyone.